we move on to our final session before lunch, which is behind the scenes. How technology can help and where it is going. For which I would like to invite on stage Mr. Vijay Kohli, Head of Mobile Strategy and Market Development, APAC, Akamai Technologies. Could we please have you on stage, sir? And could we please welcome him with a huge round of applause.
Hi, everybody. My name is Vijay Kohli. Work for Akamai Technologies. I'll have a brief 20-minute session so that it's on time and you can actually go have your lunch. To begin with, let me say a couple of things about Akamai. Akamai has been around 18 years. We are probably the largest digital content delivery solution or a platform, if you may. And we've been delivering content for most of the big OTT providers across the globe. With that, let me ask a question. How many people have heard about Akamai? Actually, probably half or maybe a little more than half. So in some ways, you can look at Akamai as a platform which delivers video which is not on YouTube. If you're not on YouTube, there's a good chance that you're actually on Akamai, or at least most of the content providers today are probably on Akamai if they're not on YouTube today, right? So let me give a brief overview of the trends which we are seeing in the India market. Today, at least this is some of the trial reports which we have, which says that there are around 315 million internet users in India today. 315 million users is actually comparable to what you see as the population of the US, right? That's a significant number. And some of the projections are that from 315, we'll go anywhere to 600, 700 million users. So that's substantial. So the whole internet boom is really happening, as you can see it. Now, of that, one of the strange things about India is that there are 315 million users, but there are only 108 million users who actually have a proper broadband. That essentially means they have a 3G, 4G, or a DSL, or a cable kind of a connection. The rest of them are on 2G and probably cannot watch videos because 2G is sort of limited per se. And here's another interesting stat. So there are 108 million broadband subscribers, but there are 350 million smartphones. 350 million good smartphones, which is more than the population of the US. So already there are lots of devices in the market where the infrastructure needs to catch up to make sure you can serve video content, you can serve e-commerce content to these particular users right now. So in some ways you see that India is in a place where it's taken off, but I think the journey is not even half done. And in the next 3-4 years, the numbers could be from anywhere from 350, which is today. You could probably go to like 600, 700 million smartphones or smartphone users, which is probably twice the size of the US, right? So what happens if you have these kind of devices? In the past, what we saw was that when people actually got internet, they probably went to Facebook, WhatsApp, SMS. Those were sort of the applications which people were using. Now with some sort of disruption which you're seeing in the market, for example, Jio coming in or BSNL providing better services and the others providing better services, you see that people are actually getting into a place where they're sort of consuming between 1 and 10 GB. So that's an interesting place to be. That means that probably people are watching 15, 20 minutes of video a day or maybe less than that, right? And that's very interesting, but that's just a beginning of where the market should be going. For example, the OTT market should be going. Our general sense is if the economics of the telcos or the whole ISP ecosystem, if it actually improves, the expectation is that you should get to a place where they're going to be heavy users. It's sort of a very good alternative for what happens on the broadcast side. And that would be something like 10 to 20 or 50 GB of content which is actually used on the digital platform. And that can happen in the next few years. There are certain challenges which need to be fixed and the economics has to be taken care of, but it could be a reality sooner than later. So what's happening if you really look at the audience itself? They're used to broadcasts. They're also used to good networks to a certain extent. So their expectations in general has significantly increased. They expect that the content is delivered in high quality. They don't have to wait around for the video to start. They don't want to wait around in between a video to see that it's not rebuffering. So those kind of expectations have gone up over the last 3-4 years. And there was a lot of conversation today about kids watching videos. I don't believe a kid's going to watch videos if you try to explain to him that there's a rebuffering going on and you have to wait for another few minutes, right? So the expectation in general has gone up. And what else is happening? I remember having a lot of conversation with our customers where we talk about stats, we talk about analytics, we say that we can improve their network, their startup times are going to reduce from like say 5 seconds to like 2 seconds, which is all true. But today sort of the game has changed a little more. It's not just about your stats and analytics and all that, but it's about being at the very best. If there is a particular player who comes into the market with some amount of differentiation and some amount of technology, everybody has to get to the standard, otherwise you sort of lose out. So in the past, it was all, in some ways you can say analog, in the sense you improve a little more, you get a little more customers. Today it's a lot more digital or binary. It's a 1 or a 0. You have to be really good for you to like make a mark in the market. Now, in the digital space, what are the 3 or 4 different key areas which you have to like sort of look at? One is we all assume that everybody wants to be successful. So you actually build a platform, you put a lot of content. The general expectation, and I think I heard quite a few subscribers, panelists talk about it, is that they start off and suddenly they are like big stars. So you need to have the scale. So if you actually start a platform, you should have the scale to say that maybe in a year, if I'm a big hit, my platform, my network can actually enable all of them, right? So that's one aspect of it. The second aspect of it is that if you actually are putting all this content out there, you need to have a good system to say whether your content is being delivered properly, are people consuming the content, are they having issues, especially with all kinds of devices out there. And the third part of it is you have a platform right now, and there's a lot of conversation about the security of your platform because of all the hacking which goes on, which is true in every different vertical out there, whether it is e-commerce or in the digital platform. Is your platform secure? Is your platform have the best kind of service possible? So those are some of the considerations which you need to look at when you're building your own platform or you're looking at scaling your platform in the next 2-3 years. Right? So what are the big challenges? In our mind, I think the 3 big challenges which we see, one is the networks itself. The Indian networks are extremely spotty. You have very good networks at some point of the day, but it's not the same at different points of time. The second problem which we are seeing with networks is most people, my senses, have 5 or 10 GB plans. How much video do you think you can watch in those 5 or 10 GB plans? Not much. And those are like the cream of the cream which have those 5 GB plans. So those are certain challenges where you have to bring down those prices. The second part is around the devices itself. iOS is fine. There's only one kind of a device. but India is predominantly an Android-based ecosystem. So how do you manage all these different Android devices which are there in the market, right? And then providing the right kind of quality, assuming that all this works out for you to provide the right kind of quality, right? So what we have pretty much seen is the content is put in some particular server farm, or it's actually stored in a particular place, and all this content has to be delivered to people to their homes. And in between, you have your Airtels of the world, you have the Vodafones of the world. They have different pipes and sizes, and usually you see a lot of issues. One, because the pipes are not fast enough. There are some bottlenecks within those particular areas. Recently, we saw in Chennai, when the storm or the cyclone just hit, a few server farms just went dry, right? Basically because that's the only place where they hosted it. So till that comes back up, you don't know what to do, right? So you need to have backups. You need to be able to serve content from different places. Those are some of the challenges which you have if you want to have a digital platform which is robust and which can serve 24/7. So what we've seen is, if you want to have a system like that, what do you need to do? You need to have what we call as an overlay system, somebody who can handle all these networks for you so that the content can be delivered from where you actually produce the content, put the content in one place, to all the millions of subscribers you have, whether they're coming from a slow BSNL network, or they're coming from a new emerging network like Jio, or if they're in some of the mature networks like Airtel, right? So you need to be able to deliver to all of them. So some of the things which Akamai has done, and a lot of other platforms out there in the market have been doing, is to make sure you can bring in the right kind of technologies which can actually put all these boxes within different networks so that you can get served locally from your network. For example, if you're watching a soap opera, a TV episode, it doesn't make sense if the TV episode is actually coming from where you produced. If you're in Airtel, it should be coming from a server which is very close to Airtel. If you're being served by BSNL, you should be able to get the content somewhere close to BSNL. So that's some of the things which we have done to make sure that you can actually scale, you can put all this content close to the end subscriber itself. So that's the first part, and that's pretty much which everybody expects today. Now, what else needs to be done? So as these digital platforms sort of mature, what we see which needs to be done is that there will be a lot more harmonization, there will be more standardization between different players, and that will sort of help put together all the kind of workflows which you need so that whatever content you produce is actually encoded, made into digital content, and it is delivered through different systems so that it actually ends up with the consumer. Now, that's great. That's the first part of it, and I think a lot of our customers we work with have actually done that. The second part of it is around how do you get feedback? How do you actually loop that back to say that this content was delivered well? Was it delivered properly? Or very high quality content was delivered? Should you be actually lowering the content? So a feedback system should be actually built in to make sure you can actually get this optimized. So how does this whole complex OTT system actually work? Essentially, you have the video, it is actually encoded, and then it's put into storage servers where all this content actually is kept. And then eventually what happens is you have a maze or a mesh of a network which has all the content, or we push all the content out there, and then you grab the content from there for the end subscribers, right? So that's how a large OTT platform is actually built. Now, one of the things which we have seen is that we need to actually, as I was saying, provide information on who is watching it, how they're watching it, what is the quality of it. So the next step which we have seen, which is happening in the market, is having these beacons out there to collect all the data, bring it on into a particular, like a BOC. We call it a BOC. Basically, it's a broadcast operation center where you can have, I think I've seen it in some of the broadcast centers as well, where you have all your channels up there and you are seeing how the quality of it is. The same thing needs to be done for digital platforms as well. So you will have your 24 channels all on screens, and all those screens you can actually watch and say, on the digital side of it, I am seeing the right content being played out. There is no graying of it and all that, right? So that's something which is a big thing right now, which needs to happen in the market. The next thing which we have seen is that we talked a little bit in the past about the economies of it. Now, if you, let me just go to this one slide. If you have looked at what's going on in the industry, there's something very interesting which has happened in the last 2 years, primarily for India. You've seen YouTube provide YouTube offline. You've seen Facebook have some Facebook instant videos. All this is because that's how you actually get eyeballs to your platform. What does YouTube offline do? The idea behind YouTube offline was that you actually download content at home, and then you commute to work, and on the way to work, you actually watch some videos because you have some time to kill. But essentially what happened was exactly the reverse. People actually go to work, download all the content, come home, and watch, right? It's something which happens all the time. So these are some of the innovations which you'll have to bring in if you want to get that consumer time. And I know that's a big metric in the market where you say, can I get a subscriber to watch my content for 6 minutes, 8 minutes, 20 minutes, right? So all that is your monetization. So Facebook has done something similar, where they've said that they've taken a different route, where they say that let's put 15 seconds of video out there, and the rest you download eventually. So when you go click on a video, it actually plays right away. That instant gratification comes, right? And what does that do? That essentially means it captivates that particular end user. So that's another thing which needs to be done. And why is all this relevant? Because once you're getting into the market where you have to get millions of users, they need to be cheap. It needs to come in so that the actual end user is not paying for it. If he thinks he's paying for 100 GB on a mobile plan, which is essentially what India is going to be, it's all going to be mobile first, it's not going to work. So you need to have creative ideas out there which will make sure that when the networks are cheap or networks are not, you don't have to pay for the networks. So for example, Jio, you don't have to pay for the network between, say, 2 o'clock and 5 in the morning. You actually download content. You actually keep content for the subscriber so that he can watch that content at his convenience, right? So those are some of the technologies which are coming in, which will be interesting to make sure that you get your consumers to be bought into your ecosystem and stay in your ecosystem. So essentially, what does that do? What can you do in that particular space? One, you can actually push content at cheap times. You can actually look at your analytics and see what relevant content has to be pushed. I know, like, somebody was talking about accidents. It's funny because you and I actually use an app, and every second video which I see is a funny accident, which is probably gross, but people actually watch that. So you need to have that amount of interaction to know what kind of content has to be put out there. And the third part is, it is everybody's problem to make sure that the content is delivered on cheaper networks. Because if you don't have cheaper networks, the subscriber is going to push back after some period of time. So how do you deliver content over cheaper networks and cheaper times, right? So those are some of the things which needs to be done. And the last one which I was talking about was the box center itself. Do you need a system which actually takes care of all your networks and looks at all your videos and makes sure that it is actually delivered on time, right? So those are some of the big things which we have looked at. And with that, I would like to take a few questions if you have any on the technology side of it. Right. So, any questions? Sure.
Hello. Hi, my name is Nishant. So interestingly, you mentioned about standardization and video delivery. So which kind of got me thinking that, recently at the CES Vegas, we saw a kind of informal community being built around VR, where they're trying to do a lot of standardization. Now that is where I kind of feel that, there's a big challenge there when it comes to delivery for VR.
Right.
Producing that kind of content, bit rates, double screens and all. What do you think is the future of VR in India? How do you think there's adoption within the broadcasters, advertisers, and what do you think 2017-18 is going to look like?
I mean, it's a very interesting space right now. I know for a fact that there are like 2 or 3 different big content providers in India who are testing it out. Nobody knows where it's going to go. I'm sure there are going to be certain verticals where it's very interesting. I've seen it in one news channel which they are using VR, the one which they are actually publishing the content in YouTube. I still believe the verdict is not out on that part of it. But my sense is, like in CES, I've seen it in MWC as well, that's probably the hottest thing which everybody's talking about right now. The challenge I see with VR is it has very high bandwidth consumption. So from an India perspective, I think it's still a cool factor. We probably have to first figure out so many other things, and eventually we'll get to the VR systems.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks for that. I just want to reiterate, I think the 2 or 3 different things which you have to really look at is that how do you scale your company if you actually are very successful. You need to have a scalable system. You need to have a system which actually can deliver very high performance. Otherwise, to actually keep the subscriber in your ecosystem is extremely challenging. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Kohli, for an insightful presentation. As a token of our appreciation, I request Mr. Khandekar to kindly do the honors. Well, that's a photograph of you doing your presentation. I hope you like that. Thank you so much.